Hello, welcome to the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. And I think the biggest question today is, Chris, do you have a magical Noo-Noo?
No, I don't have a magical Noo-Noo.
Why not?
I don't need one.
You don't need a Noo-Noo. Everyone
No.
needs a Noo-Noo. They're cool.
No, I don't need a Noo-Noo.
Did they have Noo-Noos way back when?
I don't make unnecessary messes.
You don't make unnecessary messes?
No, all the messes I make are intentional.
But if you were to make a mess, someone's got to clean it up, and you wouldn't want to be the one to clean it up. So you would need a magical Noo-Noo to clean it up, surely. That's logical, no?
No.
No?
I don't mind getting my hands dirty when I need to.
It's the cleanup. That's the boring bit, isn't it?
No, making something clean again is good. It's lots of fun.
You cook the meal, you eat the meal, and then by the time you eat the meal, you feel, actually, I just want to go sleep on the sofa. I don't fancy washing up or cleaning up. And that's where the magical Noo-Noo could come in.
Oh, okay. So I'd never have to do any washing up again?
Well, basically, yeah, I think it does everything, doesn't it? It cleans up. I mean, look at those Teletubbies and how much of a mess they all make. If it can clean up after them, it'd be perfectly able to clean up after you.
I think that's the first compliment you've paid me in weeks, Liam.
Yeah, probably is. Don't worry, I'll undo it.
You think I'm more competent than a Teletubby?
I'll undo it threefold by the end of the show. So what is a Noo-Noo? Can you remember the Noo-Noo from Teletubbies?
Well, the Noo-Noo was from Teletubbies, which from any of our foreign guests on the listening to us,
we weren't talking about Chris's pussy. No, a Noo-Noo is not a pussy.
No, it's not a euphemism for any genitalia. Although I think, like most things are in kind of children's shows, there is that deliberate double entendre, isn't there? That's there on purpose.
Yeah.
To entertain the parents. So I can imagine lots of parents out there found it very
oh yeah, it used to say things like, Noo-Noo has been sucking all day and now he's got a lump in his throat. He used to say stuff like that. Tinky Winky, can you get the lump out of Noo-Noo's throat? You wouldn't get that with a Dyson, would you?
No. Far more efficient.
So in this old children's television show called the Teletubbies, there was this robot vacuum cleaner that was basically modeled kind of like on a giraffe. So it was this big blue vacuum cleaner that was just on wheels. It just used to go around like on its own. It had a face and everything. And this big red ass that used to flash like a light on his bum. It was red or pink or something like that. I think it might have been pink, actually. And then it basically just had this like elephant's trunk with a brush on the end of it, and it just used to go around cleaning everything. So the Teletubbies were very naughty, and they'd always make messes and such, and the Noo-Noo would come out and clean everything up, basically. I was thinking whether, you personally, Chris, make magical messes, and whether you need something to clean up your magical messes, or whether you think there is a benefit to creating or hiring a Noo-Noo to get your magical messes all cleaned up. Because this came up in conversation today when we was doing the mentoring thing, the mental mentoring with someone that was talking about magical messes and energies getting exuded out and maybe stagnant spells and such. Well, I suggested they employ a magical Noo-Noo, but they got the wrong end of the stick, I think.
Well, they may have gone for as I just demonstrated, that a Noo-Noo does sound like another name a parent would give to a child's vagina.
What other names can you name? There's Cookie. Poon.
Cookie? Who calls it a cookie?
Cookie. I've heard it actually be called a cookie before. And I've heard a really rather creepy dad refer to himself as the Cookie Monster.
Oh.
Yeah. That was it, the swimming pool once.
That's awful.
Yeah.
No, the most common,
Talking
the
about
most
mummy's
common,
cooking.
the
Why
one
do we have to go in why do we have to go in different changing rooms? Because you and mummy have cookies. You have a cookie, mummy has a cookie. I've never seen mummy's cookie. Can I eat mummy's cookie? No, but I'm the cookie monster. That's my job.
Oh wow, that's
It was
awful.
something along the lines of that. It was years and years and years ago. I were a kid myself. I did not fully understand until I got older. And then I look back and shudder at the things that I used to hear at Speedwell swimming baths. They closed it down.
I'm not surprised. It was clearly a a home for training paedophiles by the sounds of it.
Yeah, well, that's public swimming pools for you, isn't it?
No, the one I never quite understood, and I really don't want to understand it, to be honest, is a lot. I know a couple of relatives that would, when talking to their young people, would call it a tuppence.
Oh yeah, that's a really old one, isn't it?
It's a really old one, but I have no idea maybe once upon a time you could get a whore for a tuppence. I don't know.
I think they might have been that you used to have to pay tuppence to go to the lavatory.
Oh, okay.
Probably because someone would say spend a penny.
Yes.
And then tuppence. Who knows? I would guess that that's probably where it came from. But either way, we don't need to talk about JJ's.
No, you asked me a question. You said another strange word. I know lots of people also call it a foof.
A foof. Yeah. Oh no, that's just the hairs on the back of my neck just stood up. Then I don't want to talk about foofs. Can we talk about magical messes, please? Or we could talk about what we were talking about in the last mentoring session, sploshing, which is slightly different than from a sploosh.
This show is supposed to be about a magical gnosis, not talking about Urban Dictionary every episode.
Okay, all right.
So
magical messes. Now we're not talking about messing up spells. I don't think. I think we're more talking about the build up of energy. Potentially. What was that?
No, we're talking about afterwards. Cleaning up messes afterwards.
Yeah.
Not bad.
When you roll over and light up a cigarette.
Yeah. You throw a towel and say, clean yourself up.
Yeah. And what was your name again? That's all right. I don't care. Get out. Get your clothes and get out.
So I think I can see the purpose for people when they're learning and they're not quite understanding energy and kind of residual energy. I think is the more important one in this context, is kind of being aware of that kind of leftover or even just like the stickiness of energy, how it clings to different things.
What you mean, like in the bath and it all goes into globules?
No, Liam. No.
I mean, it does though, doesn't it? It does. You'd have thought it would be easier to clean up in the bath. It doesn't. It just all goes into globules and just sticks to everything. You're best off doing it dry.
This is not.
Oh, these guys.
See, this is why I wanted. This is why I wanted to avoid.
I mean, it's a type of a manifestation. It's certainly magical. Water magic, Chris. Water magic, isn't it?
I give up. So the point I was trying to make was about people don't think, like, I think I'd used the analogy of smokers earlier today, where you talk about like how if you're smoking all the time and you're an avid smoker, you don't smell the kind of the stale smoke smell that is covering your clothes, your skin, that sort of thing. It was exactly the reason I never got into smoking, was because as soon as I smoked a cigarette, on the few occasions that I had, all I could smell was the smell of smoke on my hands.
Yeah.
And it was one of those smells that even after you'd washed your hands like multiple times, you could still kind of smell it. And I don't think when people start out that necessarily anyone explains in that way. Like they talk about going into a place and feeling its vibes and bollocks like that, but they don't actually talk about how the kind of residual energy that's left by spell work or people's presence in a space or those sorts of things, and give any kind of real, we talk about physical cleanup after spells, don't we, of like disposal methods.
Yeah.
But no one really talks about kind of cleansing spaces, except in that kind of really annoying salt circle kind of way the Wiccans love. But
elemental cleansings. So it's the build-up of psychic energy, the build-up of energy generally that is kind of putrefying or kind of just stagnating in that. But it's got nowhere to go. So kind of like the old magical extractor fan. If you didn't have an extractor fan in your shower, for example, it would all go steamy and then it would all go moldy and all that kind of stuff. It would all be quite gross. So that actually can happen on an energetic level. Lots and lots of spellcrafting and magic and such like that. If you do the same sort of magic all the time in one location with the same things and that, it will often retain that energy in the space. Some people want that, but other types of energy, and certainly I found with the whole consultation room and all that kind of thing, with all the varied spellcasting that happens all the time, there is a certain level of cleansing that's required. Now, people often try to retain that energy and keep it on those kind of altars. Like you hear a lot about witches or beginner witches starting witchcraft altars and stuff like that, which is basically just a table that you do your work on, although it generally devolves into a bunch of idols and some stick incense and some candles and that, and not a lot of actual magic being done. But I mean, it is literally like the equivalent really of a kitchen countertop. Like you clean your kitchen countertop, don't you? You put everything away. You don't just leave everything to go and congeal. And that should be the case in terms of magical hygiene and such as well. And what we're talking about with the magical Noo-Noo, the robotic vacuum cleaner, do you have a automated process? Because a lot of people won't have an automated process and won't think about there being an automated process. People think about general cleansings and stuff that we often encourage people to work into their everyday routines for themselves. But magical workings and working areas, temple space and such, a little bit different. You want some sort of, I would say, you either want to be really, really, really well trained, or you need to employ a cleaner. And some people that are unclean, they employ a cleaner if they can afford one, don't they? It's not like you have to do all this work yourself. You could get something else to do it. And in fact, some people often find that certain energies and spirits and such gravitate towards them because of the stink that they leave. So like when I used to have my fish tank, I was very careful with what I put in it. I put some fishes in it that would clean the gravel. I put some fishes in it that would clean the glass. And it was fairly low maintenance because I was selective. What about that potentially bringing in some bottom dwellers,
some suckerfish,
some magical corridors? Magical sucker fishes and that.
I do like the concept of a magical suckerfish for cleaning your tank. Or you get those snails, don't you, that often turn into infestations.
Yeah, snail infestations. Have you ever gone into a magical person's house or a working environment or anything like that and been overwhelmed by the stink and thought this really isn't clean energetically?
The most common ones are when I go into small churches. They generally give me headaches.
But that's because you don't like that energy, isn't it?
No, often it's the intensification of an energy that doesn't really get used. So it's that kind of stagnant energy that starts to build up in some of those places. But yes, I've gone into a lot of practitioner spaces, particularly those that do a lot of energy work, energy healing spaces.
People that work from home, like these
people that
therapy
work from home.
people, crystal dildo waving therapists that work from home from the spare room.
Well, not even necessarily though. Sometimes just going into a physio's office, like if they've got a home office, where they're doing energy work and aren't really aware that they're doing energy work, are then surprised when they start to have bad luck or attract dodgy clients that don't pay, or do you know what I mean, where they kind of starts to have a knock-on effect to their practice. The other ones is obviously a lot of psychics who kind of attract that saturnine energy, and a lot of dead people that they just take for granted is just part of their work. And they don't think about the energy impacts that has on them. But a lot of these are kind of like, people tend to think of house cleanses and house clearing, whatever you want to call them, as processes for dealing with ghosties. But generally speaking, I think a lot of them is dealing with the energy of the actual practitioner. Where they've attracted it in the first place, and you're kind of like, well, something about this house attracted the ghosties in the first place. And it's not always because they died there or something like that. It will be that a particular kind of energy, normally psychic remnants, is kind of left over, and they kind of go, oh, there's something going on over there.
I went to a house once, and the complaint was that they were experiencing almost like poltergeist activity, and there was one person that ended up getting possessed in that, but it wasn't like a proper spirit that come through. It was just going in some sort of state, and all sorts of weird manifestations and stuff. You went in, and it was like like you go in places and it's really dusty, it gets in your throat. It was kind of like that from a magical perspective. And it wasn't that there was anything innately wrong with the house or any negative spirit or anything like that there. It's just that there was quite a lot of family members there. They had a bunch of kids, mum and dad, and the whole family was quite psychic and was of that type or of that ilk that exudes or sweats out a lot of quite heated energy, so a lot of martial type of energy. So what would happen was that all of these people under one house, all fairly sensitive as well, and then literally an energy outpour from all of them, like 5 or 6 of them under one roof. It just kind of, the overflow didn't keep up like naturally, like running the bath, and the overflow is supposed to kick in. But if the tap's running too quickly, it doesn't really work. It doesn't stop it. And that was kind of what was happening there, because every house and environment and stuff has a natural flow unless it's completely sealed off, which is why we're always very careful with regards to how we teach
protection, magics, warding,
various other things like that, and gridding systems and such, because it needs to be a, maybe you're keeping stuff out, but are you actually keeping everything out, or are you filtering certain things? Is it allowed to move through? What is going on exactly? People don't think about that. You can create a bottleneck as well, potentially, where there is a certain amount of free flow, but then things like get trapped, and that's where your magical Noo-Noo comes in, isn't it? Because your magical Noo-Noo, if you were to create something like that or get a spirit or something like that, is not like a spell or something like that, because you think about spell work and stuff that you might need to change. So maybe that someone who likes candles creates candles which sucks in energy, because it sucks in the you know, air in the room essentially. So there is a certain amount of airflow being generated by a candle and such. Or changing flowers so that they absorb in stuff, and then they might change their flowers every week or something like that. Chuck the old ones out. Anything like that. You could potentially use all those sorts of things, but obviously that is something that you need to maintain. Whereas the whole magical Noo-Noo spirit side of things, the good thing is that it potentially, if it's set up and it understands, it has autonomy to be able to clean up when it feels it needs to clean up, to feed on something that it needs to feed on, and then leave other things alone. I mean, you can talk to our friend Lady Poison about what it's like to have a really shit cleaner, because a good cleaner is one of those people that you should never even notice, because they do their job so well that you only tend to notice when maintenance staff and cleaners don't do their jobs, because that's when you think, why is that light not working? It hasn't been working for fucking ages. Or why is the toilet blocked? Or what's going on here? You know, you think you only notice that sort of thing when there's something wrong. Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice it if they were doing their job properly. And that's where a magical Noo-Noo can blend into the background and potentially work as to a certain extent, a type of protection as well, potentially. Which I don't think that happened in the Teletubbies, because the Teletubbies often weren't under attack. I mean, they did very often have fully grown men in them, but
oh wow!
Well, they did. I mean, it was people dressed up in a suit, weren't they? Like Barney.
Wow.
Well, the amount of men that have been in Barney. Barney was a purple dinosaur, by the way.
Yeah. It's just not going to let us. I know a lot happened with the BBC that's been uncovered recently, but I don't think we need to make it a regular addition to the show. Okay, Liam.
Well, we'll just make it this one episode then.
What, we're going to make this? We need to rename this the Gary Glitter Show.
I was going to call it 80s.
Oh wow.
That was the 80s, wasn't it? It was all the 80s. It was all these TV presenters that did children's TV shows in the 80s, and they were all like pedos and shit.
Wow. Apparently,
at least the magical Noo-Noo was a genuine robot. It didn't have like a man or someone in it. At least I presume it didn't. There was someone inside the original R2-D2, wasn't there?
Yes. Yeah, there was a little man inside that. Yeah, I've completely lost my thread now. You talking about paedophiles?
Well, you kind of brought that up.
So yeah, I think the important part of what you were saying was about the fact that this has to have a certain amount of autonomy. It's going to need to, so not so much as it needs to have necessarily a personality, or you're not going to have to build a soul for this, but we are talking about it being an automated process. So that when leftover energy is there, I suppose the best version of this would be, because you're not wanting it to just necessarily just store it, are you? You're wanting it. It needs to be a catch and release program where it keeps it, and then you choose what you want to do with the energy. In which case, you're going to want it to kind of neutralize it as it's catching it. Or you're wanting it to power something else automated. So whether or not you made it kind of, because you can have those kitchens now, can't you, where the dishwasher talks to the washing machine and all that kind of stuff.
Things.
Yeah, which is a terrifying thought in my brain, but because surely someone's still got to empty the dishwasher, regardless of whether or not it's talking to the microwave.
No, but like the fridge and stuff like that has cameras in, and it will actually, like, if you link it to your Amazon account and stuff, it can reorder things for you.
Oh, okay.
There was one toaster, right? It was an actual toaster you could buy, and it would basically print onto your toast in the morning the weather forecast for the day.
Wow.
It would like do a rain cloud, or it would do like sun and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, seriously, what is the point of that? What is the point of that? Particularly if you're just going to end up putting like jam or something on it.
Well, surely, rather than waiting 2 minutes for it to cook, you could just look out the window, couldn't you?
Well, I mean, there's the weather forecast for later. It depends how many slices you're going to have, I guess, doesn't it?
Like, you know. Also, I don't trust the weather forecast enough in order to actually waste time having it printed on my toast.
Well, I don't really have toast, so you know.
The thing is, I can't, and I bet this will be completely wasted on you because I bet you never watched it. But I grew up watching Red Dwarf, which was a sci-fi comedy, and they had a talking toaster in that in one of the episodes. And it was talking where they upgraded its IQ, so that it could do something weird. I can't remember what, but it was I don't want to be a toaster anymore. Stop talking. It goes, all you want to talk about is toast, and it's like, well, I am a toaster. You know, I toast, therefore I am. It was brilliant. Anyway. Yeah, the idea of having household implements with AI in them is not something that particularly interests me at all. So, but I could see the point as to why you would want this particular spell to be at least kind of self-initiating, even if you have to go out and empty it, like you would the Hoover, I guess, once it's full.
I don't actually have a magical Noo-Noo, and I don't have like an automated process. What I tend to have, because a lot of spell stuff and that will have a beginning, middle, and end, or I'll just work purely energetically. So in the physical realm, I don't really have anything like that. The closest thing I think to a general like disposal and getting rid of energies is I actually have a cauldron that always sits on my desk, and I always put things in it that are bits from spellcasting and that kind of thing, and I chuck that in there, and it ends up getting burnt when it gets to the top. Realistically, it just ends up, I put a fist in it and smash it down, and then put another layer on it, and then when I can't fit any more in, then I end up taking it out and burning it. But that's nice, and it's always interesting to see the various things like go up in smoke that you've worked on in the past month or so.
Well, obviously, I wouldn't consider it to be a magical Noo-Noo.
No.
But obviously, I've talked about my candles before, how I have strategically placed candles all over the house.
The red ones.
Yeah, so they just catch spare energy from and kind of leftover energy from people who visit and that sort of thing, so that there is always those that I never have to charge my candles because they're charging all the time. That's just an automated thing that I kind of have set up based on habit. Which is the other way.
As well.
Oh yeah, of course.
Is that, do they take care of anything like that, or is that mainly just like protection that they tend to get involved with? They bring you offerings and such, don't they? So I wondered if they sensitivity to certain energies, whether they just chase it away or what.
There's a certain amount of warding they're involved in, but the main thing they're designed for is the same way in which temple cats are. They're designed for being vessels when necessary. So it allows me to have an ongoing conversation with an entity, obviously pre-approved ones, of course. But that's kind of the process they're for. I suppose naturally they probably do take care of certain, you know, just by the concept of a cat, and like you say, killing vermin, that sort of thing, are designed deliberately for keeping out disease.
So you could augment a animal or a pet potentially for that, because there's talk about familiars and such like that, with familiars, people referring to their pets as familiars and stuff, which is not really the case because they're not shape-shifting spirits. They're actually corporeal animals, aren't they? So they're not really familiars, but you could potentially use a animal or a pet or something like that